Amen. So again, just one more shameless plug. If you missed lessons 14 and 15, I would encourage you to check those videos out, at least the first 15 or 20 minutes as I'm talking about some science issues, so that you really understand what I believe the catastrophic of the global flood look like, and it'll allow you to ask me questions if you have any. So over the last 2 weeks, I built the case from the scriptures, bringing in science, that the global catastrophe was much worse than anything we had previously considered or ever imagined. If you remember, we saw 40 days and 40 nights of torrential rain. We now understand the genesis, more than likely, for that rain was the fountains of the great deep. We discussed how different the pre-flood earth would have looked. Likely much more land, much smaller oceans, much more lush vegetation. But can you imagine what it would have been like to be on our planet that day? The day the fountains of the great deep burst forth. Again, we walked through the catastrophe using Bible and science to really just try to get a handle on what it looked like. Once the flood started, we began to walk through the timeline involving Noah and the flood. We saw it initiated on a specific day in Noah's life. We saw the waters bear up the ark. Again, if you remember, the ark was 51 feet tall. So for the waters to bear up the ark, its draft was likely around 25 feet or more. So when we're reading the waters bore it up, well, yeah, here's the 25 feet deep already to bear it up. So again, we're imagining a global catastrophe of epic proportion as the waters covered the highest mountain, 15 cubits, 25 and a half feet, the highest mountain. Now keep in mind, I told you the pre-flood mountains were likely smaller than the mountains we see on our planet today. And the mountains we see on our planet today are the result of the catastrophic plate tectonics that occurred during Noah's flood. Mount Everest at 29,000 feet did not exist on the pre-flood world. You're not trying to cover this earth in 29,000 feet of water, but you are covering this earth in thousands of feet of water. We can estimate the smaller mountains, or the largest mountains then, which are smaller, probably at least 6,000 feet. So we're talking a lot of water, and again, we speculate that about half that water came from those subterranean chambers, developed on day 3, mentioned throughout the Psalms, that are going to be used to cover the earth. The earth that was created out of water is going to be destroyed by water because the thoughts of man's heart were only evil continually. And that moved God to judge man and to judge this planet. Ultimately, we're told, let's talk about this. So again, we talked last week about the longest mountain range on the planet. 10 times longer than any other mountain range, 43,000 miles long, wraps around our planet like the seam of a baseball. This is the mid-oceanic ridge. The average height, 6,600 feet. This is the genesis of catastrophic plate tectonics. Again, check out 14 and 15 if you don't know what I'm talking about. The earth bears the scar of Noah's flood in the event that happened. We did not even know this existed until the 1950s. When the Navy was mapping this thing, coming to understand what was all over the ocean floor, we had no idea. As we continue the discussion, we really talked about how God preserved Noah on the ark during the flood. The Bible records God talking to Noah 7 days before the flood. Get on the ark. I'm sending the animals. Get everything loaded. The flood is coming. The Bible does not record God talking to Noah again until it's all over and he tells him to leave the ark. That means the catastrophe, and whatever it looked like, God was silent. As it's raining sand, mud, rocks, as the water level is rising, as the ark begins to float upon the face of the waters, as Noah and his family wonder, what does tomorrow look like on this beachless ocean of a planet? God was silent. There's a good lesson for us there. God never left them. God never forsook them. God never forgot about them. He didn't misplace them. He was superintending over them the entire time. No one died on the ark. Amazingly enough, nothing was born on the ark. God was preserving life on the ark although he was very silent the entire time. And that's a lesson for you and I. God may not speak to you today in an audible voice, but he has said a lot to you already in his word. And all you need to do now is walk by faith in what he's already shared. And that's definitely the part of the, I guess, lesson from Noah's flood. A major catastrophe. God had promised that he would rescue and deliver. God delivered on his promise to rescue and deliver. The ark, a picture of the Lord Jesus Christ, a picture of the gospel, also a picture of final judgment. All of those things. Ultimately, we left Noah last week, his family. It was the 10th month, 10th day of the month, and they had just seen the mountaintops. Now imagine this. So the Bible tells us that the ark landed, I think I have a picture, landed in the mountains of Ararat. The big one on the right is Ararat. Now, we're not absolutely positive because there's so many surrounding mountains there. It could have been some of those other mountains as well. But just imagine the ark, and Rich would have said comes to grind to a halt, but that's not what the Bible says. The ark comes to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And it will be another 74 days before they will see any hint still of land. You have to wonder what's going on in their mind. What are they thinking? They're now not moving, but when he looks out his little cubit window, which is multiple windows around the top of the ark, that word is plural, he opens that little shutter and looks out, he sees water as far as the eye can see. Now the ark is aground, 25.5-foot draft, it's going to be aground, but as far as he's concerned, another 74 days before the ark will come to rest. So what I'll do, I'll read verses of chapter 8, verses 1 through 5, because that's where we ended, to get us in context, and then we'll pick up and run right from there. So I'll do my best not to say much, just to read 1 through 5 to get us going. Any questions, though, before I do that? Okay, let's get rolling. But God remembered Noah. Now, I told you I wasn't going to say anything. I do have to say something. I'm sorry. Now, we know, as believers, God had never forgotten Noah. God had not misplaced Noah. It wasn't like all of a sudden God sort of shuddered himself and went, what about Noah? No, this is anthropomorphic language. This is a Hebrew idiom. This is a Hebraism. This is an expression. God remembered. God began to act on Noah's behalf. We say this all the time. We'll pray and we will say, Lord, hear my prayer. Now, we don't mean hear in the sense of hear. He hears everything. We mean God take action. And the good news is God always takes action. Sometimes that action is no. No action right now, Rich. Be still and know that I'm God. That's the answer. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark, and God made a wind blow over the earth. There it is. He remembered him and he took action. That's the whole point. And he made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. They assuaged. They appeased. They began to decrease. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven, they're closed. The rain from the heavens is restrained, and the waters are receding from the earth continually. So the ark is come to rest in the mountains of Ararat. The waters are continuing. At the end of the 150 days, the waters will be abated. I told you that's the second group of 150 days. 150 days, the waters are said to be Gabar. They're prevailing, then they're abating, then there's the earth drying out. And you'll see it in a second. Verse 4, in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest in the mountains, plural, of Ararat, and the waters continued to abate until the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, and on the 1st day of the month, they finally saw the tops of surrounding mountains. Let me see if I can get us a picture real quick. So I didn't plan to go here, but understand what's happening here. They ran aground at day 150, came to rest. It'll be another 74 days before they will have any hint of land. That's what the Bible's recording. We have no idea what they were thinking on that ark, but that's what's going down. Verse 6. At the end of the 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven, and it went to and fro until the waters were dried up on the earth. Okay, so let's get back to our chronology. We said the ark came to rest 600 year, 7th month, 17th day of month. Then 600 year, 10th month, first day of the month, 74 days later, Noah makes the decision to send a raven. Day 263, if you're tracking this. He sends this raven. We're told that he sends it and it just goes to and fro. It never comes back. So he opens a window, he sends forth this raven, it's just gone. Verse 8. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand, took her, and brought her into the ark with him. Now, when you read this, Gretchen, it's almost like James, he sent the raven, and then he sent the dove right behind it. That's probably not what happened. Look at verse 10. In verse 10, when he sends the dove, the next dove, the same dove again likely, he waited another 7 days. So likely what we weren't told is he had waited 7 days to send that first dove, then he's going to wait another 7 days. So although when you read it, you don't see that, likely the use of another in verse 10, which by the way is used 166 times in the Hebrew Bible, always translated another or other. It's likely that these are 3 sets of 7s when he's sending out a dove. So he sent the raven after 40 days, didn't come back. What does that mean? Well, the raven found a carcass or a dead tree or whatever, something floating. It's like, hey, this will work for me. I'll land here, David. 7 days later, he sends the dove comes back. Like, no, this isn't going to work for me. Nothing for me. And then we'll see in verse 10 that he waits another 7 days and sends out that second dove. So it is possible that he did all of the first raven and the dove on the same day, but I don't think so. I think the another there gives it away. Again, the chronology of it all, right? You can see it. Day 40, he sends the raven. Day 7, he sends the dove. Waits another 7 days. Verse 10, he sends that second dove. And that's where we find ourselves there. He waited another 7 days, sent the dove out of the ark. The dove came back to him in the evening again. But behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. First one came back empty-handed. Second one comes back with a small little olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided off the earth. So again, he waits another 7 days. He sends out that second dove. You can see where we're at. We're right here at the 600th year, the 11th month, the 25th day of the month. That's day 277 in this catastrophe from day 0. And bring the mic up to Kitty, if you will, because I think she has a question. Does someone will run the... Do you have... No? You good? Oh, never mind. Disregard. Oh, yes. Come.
Yes, no, yes, no.
Yes, no, come. So again, 40 days raven, 7 days dove, 7 days another dove. That dove brings back a little teeny olive leaf, a sprouting olive tree somewhere in the midst of all the devastation.
I was just trying to bring it back full circle because I had never, I don't, how many times have I read this? But I've never put into my head the olive leaf.
Olive leaf.
Coming back.
So picture, again, for those who were not with us here in lessons 14 and 15, the devastation and destruction that's happened here on planet Earth. Everything that's happening now is small and resprouting. This is life rebudding. This is devastation, the old earth perishing, and the new earth budding forth new life. And this dove, this second dove, after the second 7 days, brings back this olive branch in her mouth. And now we're told that Noah knows that the waters have subsided, they've assuaged, they've appeased, they've decreased from the face of the earth. Verse 12. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return anymore. So Sandy was talking about the use of number. So you see them here, right? You see the 40 days, he sends the raven. Then you see three sets of 7 involving these doves. With the second one, the dove does not return. And so there, let's get us back to our chronology just so we can see it. So there, we're right here. He sends out the dove, and it doesn't return to him. Day 284, 600 year, 12th month, second day after that third 7 days. Now, again, if you're not familiar with this chart, it's up on our website. The things that are in black come straight from the Bible. Those are numbers that come from the Bible. The things in red are Rich's extrapolation based on the numbers it's using. So that means they're questionable. You need to check those out. They could be wrong. But you can see when it tells you, like it'll say 7 days, then I add those 7 days to Noah's life. So I'm just tracking this whole event across its Genesis to the end of Noah's flood. And what you can see is 7 days of preparation, 150 days of water prevailing. The ark comes to rest on day 150. The waters are no longer Gabar now. They're no longer mighty. The ark is resting once again on the earth, and the waters are assuaging. They're going down. Now, they were already going down before that, but they were still mighty in the fact that they covered the earth and the ark was floating. The moment the ark hits ground again, he stops using that word, they're mighty. They're no longer mighty anymore. The ark is back on ground, even though they can't see the ground yet. And then you have 150 days of abating. That's where we're at here. And we're right here, day 284, 600 year, 12th month, second day of the month, 284 of the cataclysm. If you want to add in the 7 days that they spent getting the animals on board, when God told them to load the ark, then that would be 291 from that point. Was there a question somewhere? Oh, so I'll keep talking while the mic's coming. So again, just to keep the scope of this event intact.
I haven't been here, so have you already addressed the fact that under the waters, are there trees that survive in some way? And so that it just rebuds once the water goes down?
So the trees are all level, but there's
Levels.
root systems that are intact. And from those root systems, likely trees are going to bud.
Because that seems like a quick time for.
It is a very quick time, so things don't rot in that quick a time. What's interesting, and this has nothing to do with the lesson, it's just an interesting observation. So you guys know I'm at the Nassau Center, and we're draining our pond because we're doing a lot of work there. We're expanding the pond. That reason doesn't matter. What's interesting to notice is how quickly the life is coming back to life from under this pond. And grass is growing where there was a pond. It's been a pond for years. I'm like, how does stuff sprout out so quickly in what was covered with water for years? I don't know the answer to that, other than you can, if you want to come to the Nassau Center and check it out, you can. But that's what I think is happening here. The earth has been devastated by the catastrophe that is the flood, but things are budding back. And seeds, and this little olive tree is budding back, and this dove finds this olive leaf and brings it to Noah. And Noah now knows the waters are assuaged. He sends out the third dove. It does not return. It has a place to land. It has a place to light and begin its new life here on the new earth.
And what's the meaning of the olive leaf is peace, olive branch. Peace.
Absolutely.
Peace coming back.
And so just a beautiful picture of what's going on. So any other questions before we continue to advance the story of what's going on here with Noah in the flood? Okay. In the 600 year and first year, first month, first day of the month. So we started in the 600 year, second month, 17th day of the month of Noah's life. We've now made it to the 601st year, first day, first month, first day. The waters were dried from off the earth. I want you to keep your eye on that word. Noah removed the covering of the ark. We have never been told anything about this. At no point has Noah said anything about this covering that he just removed. This is the first hint we have of anything like this on the ark. We've been told about windows. We've been told about decks. We've been told about the door in the side of the ark, the single door. We've not been told about a covering at all. And here we are told that the 601st year of Noah's life, the waters are dried from off the earth. Noah removes the covering of the ark, and he looks, and behold, the face of the ground is dry. That's the exact same word, by the way, Hebrew word that was used earlier there in verse 13 that I told you to keep your eye on, that it's dried from off the earth. Same exact Hebrew word. So here again, what we're looking at, to get all this set in our minds, We're day 314. This is the 601st year, first month, first day, 14 days after the 300-day period, a month since he didn't get back the dove that he sent out. 29 days. That was a month ago. They've been setting on the ark for a month. The dove is gone and come back. They're on the ark. And then finally, we're not sure why. We don't have any hint God told him to, but he removes the covering off the ark. Now, what's interesting about this word is not used again in Genesis. This is the only place this word is used. The word is the same word that they covered the tabernacle. When they put the coverings over the tabernacle, same exact Hebrew word. When they took the articles that they used in the tabernacle and they wrapped them in a covering to transport them, same exact Hebrew word. Only used here, interestingly enough, in Genesis. Now, as I try to understand what we're being told, because I'm a picture guy, I got to see, okay, I get the words, I got to see the words in a picture. So we know about the multiple windows that wrapped around the ark. And by the way, the word was plural. They were a cubit high. So we picture cubit, foot and a half, 20.4 inches, let's be precise, windows, shuttered around. But I think what we're being told now is that area that, and this is a model, right? We don't know what it looked like. So please don't think I believe we know what the ark looked like. But it looks something like this. It had a design similar to this. I think we're talking about the roof that was above the windows. That was the covering that he removed. What's interesting is the hint is he really couldn't see the ground clearly until he did that. He was looking out these windows and he could see a distance, but he couldn't see clearly what was right next to him until he removed this covering. Because look at the language. He removed the covering off the ark in verse 13 and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. Now, he had been looking out the window, but he couldn't see next to him. He couldn't see close to him until just now. And so whatever it looked like, I think this is a reasonable idea. There was the windows that wrapped around the top. This gave him access to the deck of the ship. Once on the deck, he could now look over the side, and he saw that the ground was dry. It had dried out. Now, what's interesting about this Hebrew word? It is normally translated one of two words, waste or desolate. It is not normally translated dried. So let me insert that word into this verse, and I think it gives you the idea that we're supposed to get. In the 601st year of Noah's life, in the first month and the first day of the month, the waters were desolate from off the face of the earth. And Noah removed the covering off the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was desolate. You see, that's what I think we were supposed to get. It's not fully dried out yet. That's going to happen in a moment. I think we were supposed to get what Noah saw. And do you know what he saw when he looked over? He saw an earth that looked nothing like the one he left. He saw an earth that was desolate, only brand new growth, an earth that was overturned, an earth that was destroyed. The old earth that Peter said had perished. That's what he saw. He saw desolation. He saw the waters were now desolate. He saw the land was laid waste. That's what he saw, I think, as he removed the covering. Again, I can't imagine the lush, beautiful planet that he left and what he sees now. So, second month, 27th day of the month, the earth was desolate. Again, so if you're tracking all this, there's the genealogy. So it's the world that perished, the world that was annihilated. Verse 15. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons wives with you." Let's just pause and go back and tell the movie again. Noah looks, 601st year, first month, first day. He sees nothing but desolation. And he waits. And he waits. And he waits. Another 56 days to bring this catastrophe to a grand length of 370 days, or 377, if you count the 7 days of preparation, before the Lord speaks again. We said it last week. I said it in the class who's a week behind you, the 745 class. As best we can tell, God was silent this entire time. And finally, God speaks. But God, although silent, was never, ever missing. He was never gone. He was never not with them. And now he directs them, go from the ark, you and your wife and your sons wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So if you are keeping score, the first time God spoke, go build an ark. I'm going to destroy this place with water. And the writer of Hebrews tells us that Noah was moved with fear, moved by faith, and he went and began to construct an ark that likely took decades and tons of money to construct. And as best we can tell, Mike, God was silent the entire time. I'd have been like, day 100 as this ark's going on. Now, Lord, are we sure about an ark here? As best we can tell, Noah kept walking by faith. That's the lesson for us. The next time number 2, God speaks, as best we know, is when he tells Noah, get on the ark. In 7 days it's coming. We made the little joke. Methuselah was probably looking pretty rough that morning. His name means when he dies, it comes. They got the bad report on Methuselah, and then God said, board the ark. And they said, we better board the ark. God sent the animals. The Lord shut the door, and it began to rain. All debate about whether rain was possible, if there was a canopy or not. All debate about would God destroy the earth with water. All debate about is it possible for water to cover the earth. All theological debates about can Yahweh do this. They ended. The sermons ended. Noah's declaration of what God was going to do ended. And the opportunity to escape the cataclysm ended. And there's another day just like that coming. There's another day when the sermons will end. There's another day when the pleadings to come unto him, all you who labor or heavy laden, and he will give you rest, is going to end. And this just reminds us in a very graphic way of that day. And here we see every living creature coming off the ark. I suspect, and this is the third time, I suspect that as Noah built the ark, there were people making fun of him, mocking him, laughing. You know, when the water hit their ankles, I bet there was no more mocking. Probably by the knees, there was no more laughing. Here, the third time, God speaks, and at this time, he tells them to exit the ark. But the entire time, he had been protecting, guiding, superintending, although quiet. And that's a good point for our lives as well. Just as Noah had to trust the sovereign God to deliver him through the flood, you and I have things in our life we're going to have to trust the sovereign God to deliver us. If I surveyed the folks who were in Israel, they would tell me things are going to come in your life, and their whole design is to cause you to trust the sovereign God who oversees your life to take you through it. Verse 18. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wives, and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out by families from the ark. I love that picture. It pictured them going out the way they came in, each animal kind together. Now, we don't know what it looked like to build the scaffolding to get them off the ark. You know, I want pictures. Like, where'd you stow the stuff, Noah? I need your schematic for how you stowed the wood that you're going to... We don't know any of that. We know that the flood is over. We know God has supernaturally protected and guided the ark. We know it has landed. 370 days, if you count the 7 days of preparation, 377, and man is back on the face of the planet. But consider now, if we use the population calculator, I think we were settling on 10 kids per family to make a total of 24 million people. It is likely, no, it is absolutely of a certainty that everyone on that ark, all 8 of those souls, Kitty, knew a lot of people who perished. Not only did they know a lot of people, they had a lot of family members who perished. You see, they came back to an earth that was devastated with broken hearts over those who had perished in the tragedy that was the flood. You know, as I consider that and as I think of what that must have been like, I just want to remind you and I, that's not how the story ends. That's not the end of our story. You see, in heaven, we're told in the book of Revelation that He wipes away every tear. You see, the movie ends very differently for us, but I want you to sense how the movie must have ended for them as they exited the ark. If there was a canopy, it is gone. That thing was destroyed almost immediately when the fountains of the great deep were broken up. If it did not rain previously, it does now. And you ready for this? Sometimes that rain is catastrophic on a local scale. Sometimes those floodwaters rise and people perish once again, not on a global scale, but on a local scale. And I'll say this so that you just kind of put it in your thinker. There is no way for 1,000 different reasons the flood could be local. If it is, then God has broken that promise time upon time again, because we've had lots of local floods. If it was a global flood, then God has never broken that promise. God has held to that promise, and He will for eternity. He will never destroy the earth again with water. He will destroy it with fire, according to Peter, but He will not do it with water.
Is that global warming?
It will be. That will be some serious global warming. Thank you, brother. Imagine the massive oceans that Noah is going to experience. Much different than what he saw. It is entertaining. I'll read you Revelation 21:21. Speak, Lord, for your servant hears. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea. Lush vegetation when Noah left, desolation when Noah returned. Average lifespan of man, pre-flood, 912.3 years, not counting Enoch because the Lord took him, so we had to take him out of the equation. Guess what? We live a ninth of that if we're lucky. The long life for animals, done. The massive environment that would have allowed massive dinosaurs to flourish, it's over. It's a totally different world that Noah finds himself in as the ark lands. Any additional questions before we continue to advance the story?
I must say you have lots of faith, because if you would have waited 100 days to ask God about what's going on, I think I would have been about 10 minutes. God, you sure? So you have lots of faith, Rich.
What I want us to think about is, what would it have been like to be on that ark? Mud, sand, silt raining against the side. The ark's being lifted up. Rain, rocks, debris, peppering the ark. Imagine it's a rough ride. Think of what's going on in the atmosphere. And God's silent. And sometimes we're going to hit turbulence like that in our life. God has never left us. He's not going to forsake us. He didn't them. He's not going to them. But can you imagine what it was like, James? As you're just now, and then it finally stops, and you're adrift on a beachless ocean as far as the eye can see. And you're beginning to wonder, is this the new normal? Is this it? Is this it?
Going back to I think it's Exodus 6, and the triggering event to the flood starting. Did I hear you correctly? You were saying something about Methuselah being a triggering event, and I want you to comment on, if you haven't already, on the Naphtali as being a triggering event. Did you cover that?
We did.
Oh, okay, forget it. I read
Catch
it.
that on the video, but I will answer the first parts of that question because they're worthy of a discussion. So we are certain when the flood happened. On the 600 year, 2nd month, 17th day of the month, on that very day, the fountains of the great deep burst forth. The windows, plural, of heaven were opened, and it began to rain on that very day. Now, the lead into that was Methuselah, the man who lived longer than any other man. His name means when he dies, it happens. Now, they would have had no idea what it was, but we do. And when you look at the genealogy, which I don't think I have the graph up, and I don't want to go dig it up because it's a hidden slide, and I want to keep us on track, but I'll have it for next week because we'll talk about it. But he died the same year of the flood when you trace the genealogies. And my point is, it is interesting to Rich that the guy whose name means when he dies, it comes, and the it we know is global destruction, the it we know is the destruction of everything in which is the breath of life. When he dies, that is going to come. And he is the guy who lives longer than any other man on this planet. A loving, kind, merciful, opportunity-giving, patient God who knew only 7 in Noah were coming. But yet Noah, the herald of righteousness, according to 1 Peter 2, the preacher of righteousness, that's what that Greek word means, was declaring what God was going to do. They were laughing and jeering and rejecting, but God gave them time after time after time and more time. The longest man who ever lived, his name meant when he dies, it comes. But my point, the day came when he died. The day came when it happened. Anything else? Yeah, Richard.
I think kind of lost in all of this is the faithfulness of Noah's wife and sons' wives. Noah got the message. Noah heard the word. Noah heard the call, and Noah began the construction. And he had, these immediate family members around him who, in essence, had to buy in to the call that their father and husband and father-in-law got. And they were along for the ride, so the silence of the Lord was also the silence of the Lord to them. And they're our ancestors. They're the ones we get to rejoice in because they're responsible for populating the earth.
All of us descend from them. And so, Richard, you're exactly right. The Lord doesn't talk about them or their faith, but clearly they were exercising faith. We can speculate that Noah had other kids. If the average was 10, and we're talking about 3 sons, then what does that tell you? 7 are missing. 7 perished. Now, we don't know that number to be true. We're not for sure. But it's likely he had children who perished in the flood, who rejected what he was declaring. And no doubt, it crushed his heart. But no doubt he continued to operate by faith, even with his heart being crushed, even with his children rejecting the message. He continued to walk by faith. Again, great lessons for you and I. Anything else? Lost my clicker, who knows? I have to use the thing here. Okay.
It's right on your stand. It's on your stand.
Perfect.
It's right on your stand. Right.
Oh, thank you. Verse 20. Then Noah built an altar to Yahweh and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on that altar. Now, by the way, the word translated altar used over 400 times in the Hebrew Bible. This is the very first time we're introduced to this word. Did Enoch build an altar? I don't know. I can tell you this, Noah did. How did Noah build the altar? Can't tell you. I would assume God told him. But Noah built an altar, and notice what Noah did. He took some of every clean animal. Now, you remember we talked about when we read in the Bible that he had to bring 7 pairs of the clean animals, right? Well, how did he know? Well, maybe God told him. Ultimately, we came to this point. Well, God delivered the animals, so the ones where there's 14, he would have said, oh, I guess that's a clean one. And then when the pigs came in and there was only 2, he would have said, well, I guess that's not a clean one. But notice what he does here. And look at the language. Noah built this altar to Yahweh. He took some. of every clean animal and some of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on that altar to Yahweh, the one who had delivered him through this catastrophe. Now, I don't know what comes to your mind when you read that, but I don't picture like he offered one bull and one bird. Look at the language. He took some of every clean animal. That seems like a few different animals to Rich. And he took some of every clean bird. That sounds like a few different bird offerings, and he offered them on this altar to Yahweh as a burnt offering. By the way, this is the first time we're told about burnt offerings. The next time we're going to read about a burnt offering happens to be in Genesis 22. He, Yahweh, said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering on the mountain that I will show you." And here Noah, moved by faith, constructs an altar and offers many burnt offerings to Yahweh there in the mountains of Ararat to thank God for his deliverance of him and his family through this global catastrophe. Verse 21. Yahweh smelled the pleasing aroma, and Yahweh said in his heart, "I will never again curse the ground because of man. For the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I've done, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease." Now look at the picture. Yahweh smelled. Now again, should go right there. This is anthropomorphic language. This should be right there with heard and right there with remembered. The idea is, as Yahweh smells the fragrance, he's reminded of Noah's faith. He's reminded that Noah walked with him. He's reminded that Noah was obedient to him. He's reminded that Noah is doing this out of a heart of obedience. Revelation 8. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer. And he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar. And the smoke of this incense with the prayers of the saints rose up before God in the hand of the angel. That's the picture you should have of Noah. It wasn't the sacrifice principally, it was everything that had happened to this moment. It was his obedience, it was his faith, and now this was an offering to his God for delivering him. And God was pleased. And it's a beautiful picture of how we offer ourselves to God. Now, first we're recorded that God smelled, then we're recorded what God said in his heart. It's almost like we're let into the thoughts of Yahweh, what Yahweh thought in his head. And here's what he thought, quote, "I will never again curse the ground because of man. For the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I've done, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night. They shall not cease." You see, destroying mankind had not fixed the sin problem. We needed something much different to fix that problem. Getting it down to 8 righteous people did not fix the problem, because those 8 righteous people were still sinners. They still needed a Savior. They were not perfect. They were not perfectly obedient. On a good day, they were pretty decent, but overall, they fell short just like you and I do. And it turns out, as the scriptures would remind us before I go to Gina, and if you'll get the mic to Gina, Rob. And it turns out, as the scriptures remind us, that justification has always been by faith. Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him as righteousness. David believed God, and it was accounted to him as righteousness. You and I believe God, and it's accounted to us as righteousness. Legizomai. We're declared righteous before God. Gina.
So the animals used in the burnt offering, are we to assume they are now extinct?
No, the clean animals. So great question, Gina. So I didn't make that clear enough in this run-up. So with the clean animals, we're told that they brought 7 pairs. So they brought 1 pair of all the standard animals and 14, or stated differently, 7 pairs of the clean animals and the birds. So we did wipe out some of them when we offer, but they were not extinct because we started with a base of 14, an N of 14.
Okay, real quick. It
And hope that
says,
answered them.
The Lord said to himself, but we have a recording of it.
We do.
So he must have also said it to Noah.
Whether he shared it with Noah or whether he shared it with Moses. So this really gets back to a lesson we talked about in the very beginning, the Genesis of Genesis. It's one of the papers up on our website. Where did all this information come from? And theologians believe 3 places. Place number 1, clearly some things were told directly to Moses. No doubt about that. Think of all the times Moses spent in the tent of meeting with God. No doubt God conveyed things to Moses. But some of this might have been oral tradition. It might have been songs that they sang, that they taught each other about the goodness of God. Equally, some of this may have been written down and handed down generation to generation. So it may be that, like the chronicler, like a lot of the Old Testament, Moses started out with some written records, some songs, and things Yahweh told him, and he culled all that together into Genesis. And hopefully that answered your question. But somebody told him what God was thinking. But let's be honest, somebody told us, Yahweh told somebody what happened when he created. Because no one was here to watch it. Man didn't show up until day 6. So the camera guy didn't arrive until day 6. So God had to tell either Adam, and Adam conveyed it, or he told Moses. And hopefully that answered that question. Scott.
Backing up a bit.
Okay, what verse?
But, okay, when the ark came to rest, he sent out a raven. Then he sent out the doves 3 times. What's the significance of the raven being sent out first and then the dove? Are there any discussions regarding that? I mean, it's weird that he would send a raven
Unclean bird.
and then switch over to a dove.
Yeah, then switch to doves. I don't know. If anybody in the room does, now's the time to. Okay, Sherry has a thought, so I'm going to just fill the space with a little bit of noise while the mic heads her way. I don't know. We're dealing with an unclean bird. We're dealing with 40 days, which is typically the period of testing, right? We're dealing with three sets of doves separated by 7 days. So again, however you smear that together, it probably involves all those things. And then we're going to go to Kitty.
I believe raven is unclean and they're
That's
in
right.
the family of scavengers.
They are.
Like
Yeah, it's an unclean
vultures.
bird. They're a vulture.
So they would have found a carcass, perhaps.
But why send them first, Scott? I don't. Expendable. The raven was expendable. But see, he was expendable. He found a place to hang out. Yeah,
Well, if doves are sacrificed, are
They
they,
are.
are they considered unclean?
they're clean. Doves
They're
are clean.
clean.
Mhm.
Is the terms clean and unclean used by Jews today?
It is.
And we know now what those animals are.
In the Old Testament, it's clearly articulated. We would assume it's the same here in Genesis, right? Before the giving of the law, we would assume the animals didn't change categories. So we would assume that what was clean in Noah's day, although it's not clear to us how he knew what was clean, other than 14 of them showed up, and that would have been I guess that one's clean. But other than that, we don't know. But God clearly articulates it with Moses, what's clean and unclean. Hopefully that made sense of that. Dean has a question, Rob.
Uh-oh. This is so confirming because it just helps me remember how we are truly created in God's image because we all love the smell of a barbecue.
Okay. I think sometimes I tell you, hey, Lord, help us to remember the things that are critical and get rid of it. Okay, get rid of that one. All right. Oh. Chapter 9. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Okay, so this is starting to sound like the original thing that he told Adam. As we hear this, all of a sudden a familiar twinge begins to happen in our ear. God blesses them. Yahweh blesses Noah. He blesses the children, the sons. He blesses, no doubt, the wives. and he says, be fruitful and multiply. It reminds us of Genesis 1 when he created man. And so let's read that one to set it up for us. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. We just read that here. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. We just read that. And fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heaven, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. This seems familiar to us as we read it. So let's go back to it. So God blesses them. He says, be fruitful and multiply. Verse 2. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. This just took a totally different turn. Adam was told to have dominion and to subdue. Here Noah said the fear of man and the dread of man will be upon the animal kingdom. They will fear you. He doesn't tell them to subdue. He doesn't say you have dominion. He does something different now to protect man. And he puts the dread of man into the animal kingdom. The fear of you and the dread of you. Verse 3. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. Up until this minute, Noah, and as best we can tell, animals only ate plants. Everybody, plants. And this is the point where God condones meat eating. Look at what he says. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. Here, God is allowing man and telling man, go take down that animal and eat it. It is now authorized. That animal that he just put the fear and the dread of. Verse 4. But you shall not eat the flesh with its life that is in its blood. So here, before we ever read about the Mosaic covenant, before we ever read about the blood, before we ever read about the life, already God is saying, okay, you can eat animals, but you can't drink the blood. You can't eat the blood. The life is in the blood. The blood belongs to me. You don't eat that. So even here, we see God forbids the drinking, the eating of the blood, because we're told why. The creature's life is in the blood. Verse 5. And for your lifeblood, I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require, and from man, from his fellow man I will require a reckoning for his life. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. Do you want to know when God introduced capital punishment? Right here. Wasn't the Mosaic covenant. It was right here. It was coming off the ark. It was when God put the fear and the dread of man into the animal kingdom. It was when God said, you can now eat animals, don't eat the blood. It was here he said, but let me tell you something. When you take a man's life, I will require it at your hands. In fact, notice what he says. I will even require it of the beast when they take a man's life. Because man was made in my image. Now, we live in a day and age when there's a lot of confusion over what's important and what's not. Here, God is authorizing man to kill and eat animals, but they can't kill each other because man is made in the image of God. Man is a reflector of the glory of God. And man is not allowed to kill one another. And here, God introduces capital punishment. And it ends in verse 7, and you be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth, multiply in it. To Noah's family, be fruitful, multiply, increase over the earth, grow over it. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Rich, what was the reason behind the switch?
Limit their
You don't know.
Don't they only live to 120?
So man now, if we take that verse earlier, that to mean man can only live 120 years, likely a lot has happened. So a lot has happened in our atmosphere. If there was a canopy that was blocking harmful radiation, that is gone. All of those things together make man live a lot shorter life now.
So maybe God figured if everybody on the earth was just eating fruits and vegetables, if he gave them something to kill instead of killing each other, maybe the humans would calm down and stop slaughtering each other. Because that was the whole reason behind the flood. You know, we were so evil before that.
And you ready
But
for
we
the
were also
grand?
only eating fruits and vegetables. So hey, maybe he's like, all these humans are all nuts. Maybe I should give them something to kill besides each other,
And
then
you ready
they
for
can
the
actually
grand
eat it
reality?
too.
The flood didn't fix the problem. He had to do something even more drastic to fix the problem. He had to send his son in our place to die for us, to pay the debt we owed. That was the only thing that would fix this problem. Even a global flood and reducing the population to 8 people who were following Yahweh did not fix the problem. It took something even much more radical. God stepping out of eternity into time in the person of Jesus. That's how radical the final plan was. Any other questions? Lord willing, we'll pick back up here next week. Noah is now back on, I would say familiar ground, but that is not true. This ground looks much different. But he's back on land. This earth that was created out of water, perished underwater, has been resurrected back out of water. A picture of baptism, a picture of the new creation, a picture of new life, a picture of the gospel. Think of the ark and salvation being only in the ark. All of these New Testament pictures right here in this story. Any closing comments before we pray and exit the room?
God said, eat meat. That's what he said.
God authorized the eating of meat. Anything else? We got down to 120 seconds. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for our time together. Lord, I pray that we would sense